It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. The only SEC team remaining in the NCAA tournament stayed alive on Thursday as Arkansas knocked off top-seeded Gonzaga in the Sweet 16, 74-68. The Zags weren't the only one seed to go down as 5-seed Houston defeated Arizona in the South region 72-60. Villanova also staying alive, getting past Michigan, and Duke surviving Texas Tech with a 78-73 win to send Coach K's final tournament run into the Elite Eight. In women's hoops, Middle Tennessee defeated Vanderbilt 55-53 in the women's NIT to advance to the quarterfinals. The Blue Raiders will face Toledo on Monday, and the Preds have lost back-to-back games by a score of 6-1. Last night, it was at the Vegas Golden Knights to round out a road trip. They'll return home this weekend to host the Philadelphia Flyers in Bridgestone Arena on Sunday. Preds remain fourth in the Central. World Cup qualification, the U.S. men's national team left Mexico with a scoreless draw on Thursday, picking up a point. Nashville SC's Walker Zimmerman starting and playing all 90 minutes. The U.S. can officially qualify for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar with a win against Panama on Sunday. Former Titans linebacker Jayon Brown has been signed by the Las Vegas Raiders as an unrestricted free agent. The former fifth-round pick spent the last 5 years playing for the Titans, led them in tackles in 2019. And new Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson will once again avoid criminal charges as a second grand jury in Texas declined to indict him after considering an accusation of sexual misconduct. Watson will speak to the media for the first time as a Cleveland Brown today at noon. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What is happening? Welcome in on this Friday. So happy to have made it to the end of the week with you guys. Welcome into today's show. Lucas back there making it happen. We are jam-packed and loaded with guests and topics. Your phone calls are certainly welcome. 615-737-1045. Jump in on the conversation. We're going to have several different kinds of conversations today. 615-737-1045. That's the number. We don't, we tend to live produce the show, and I don't ask you guys, well, actually, that's not true. I ask you guys for a lot on a regular basis. I ask you guys to call us. I ask you guys to, share the show on social media. If you're live streaming, I ask you guys to basically carry us for 3 hours. But today, I need you. I need you bad. I told Lucas this morning I'm in a weird kind of funk. I don't know what's happening. I wasn't sure if I was going to, if my energy was appropriate. How did you feel about our meeting this morning when we typically plan the show? How did you feel about the way I feel like I didn't have good body language.
Well, you were here an hour before the show, so that was already off to a good start.
Red flag.
Yeah, you're early. Something's wrong.
I don't know what my deal is today. I feel okay. No, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing. I'm not having any kind of outside existential crises in my life, but I need you guys today. I need you to keep my energy up because I don't know what my deal is, but we're going to get through it together. So let's start with college basketball. Goodness gracious. I mean, the game that I think everybody was most talking about, because there was a lot of exciting games yesterday in the first round of the Sweet 16. March Madness continues later this afternoon into this evening. But Duke, 78-73 over Texas Tech on Thursday night. It was a sea of Blue Devil fans in the Chase Center. And it was, speaking of weird energy, didn't it feel like we were getting ready to watch Coach K's career end? And it's not something. It was a weird feeling, like the weird feeling that I have today. Like I said, I'm not able to identify the weird feeling that I'm having today. But last night, I knew what the weird feeling was. The weird feeling was I was rooting for Coach K, and that's never happened before in my life. Now I've got no strong objections to Duke, although many people do, understandably so. He has been around for a long, long time. They have been dominant for a long, long time. People are sick and tired of Duke and Coach K. Totally get it. Totally get it if you're one of those people. But with the way that game was so competitive throughout, and the way that Duke, I mean, again, in the tournament, we have seen them do this. Just kind of turn it on when they need clutch baskets. And the way that the final or the exchange in the final like minute and a half of play, like I was watching it in my bedroom, but I was not like laying down in bed. I was sitting on the edge of my bed watching this game, probably far too close to the television, but like it was weird because it felt like Coach K all of a sudden was like the lovable underdog, which is just not so. That does not equate. Does not compute. But with this tournament so far, where now all of the 1 seeds have been eliminated, and Arkansas is in back-to-back Elite Eights, and nothing in the world of college basketball makes any kind of sense, something about this Duke team I am enjoying. And I don't know if it's just because they play this weird brand of desperation basketball. Because I should definitely attach myself to a more likable team. Arkansas and Eric Musselman, infinitely more likable than the Duke Blue Devils and Coach K.
Is it because you're afraid to stop hating Coach K? You want Coach K's run to continue so that you can continue hating him?
You know, I've never hated him. I'm not one of these people that, like, I know people hate Mike Krzyzewski. People despise him. They despise that program. There's always, like, I mean, whether it's Grayson Allen or J.J. Redick or Christian Laettner, like there's always one Duke player that everybody hates, and that's like a generational type of hate. That stuff does not just extend to their college careers, but it tends to follow them into the pros as well. I think that when you diagnose the whole situation around Coach K, it's not like people are rooting for him. And watch, they're going to win it all, and everybody's going to be like, oh, all of that just to watch Duke win it again, even as they are something that, you know, most of us are ready to see it done. I don't want to hear Every Time We Touch by Cascada or whatever the name of the EDM group is that the music plays every time Coach K and Duke take the court. I'm not here for all that weird hand dancing that Coach K does. Like, the majority of it, like I'm not a fan of the Coach K experience, but I'm not one of these people that outright like has disdain for him. And yet I found myself in this weird place just enjoying the basketball last night. I mean, whether it was Arizona and Houston now make Kelvin Sampson just making me regret Indiana firing him a couple of years ago, or I mean, it's been the better part of a decade ago at this point because he made a couple of phone calls that he wasn't supposed to make. Like that's my version. That's my version of I'm blanking. I can't believe I'm blanking on the Auburn coach's name. He used to coach at Tennessee. What's
Bruce
wrong?
Pearl.
Bruce Pearl. See, I'm telling you. I don't know what's my deal. I don't know what my deal is today.
Sampson is your Bruce Pearl?
Sampson is my Bruce Pearl. Except I think Kelvin Sampson's better than Bruce Pearl.
Well, it's hard because Indiana hasn't recovered in the way that Tennessee has in basketball since Sampson left.
No, Kelvin Sampson was the source of the kneecapping, and since then, the program that I attach far too much of my emotions to has been on its knees basically since he left. So, like, that is my greatest source of basketball, or really at this point in my life, sports pain. But with all of the different results across at least the first night of the Sweet 16, I wasn't upset to keep watching Duke play. Where in any other year, you know, I'd be happy to see somebody upset Duke. I would have loved to see it happen last night against Texas Tech. Texas Tech is an infinitely more rootable story, or an easier to root for story. Whether, you know, the coach having the transition. Who was the coach of Texas now? Chris Beard, who had them in the title game, went to Texas. Now Texas Tech fans hate him. So you have this situation where there's a changing of the guard from a coaching standpoint, and yet they keep them at this high level. I mean, Tennessee Texas Tech was one of the more fun games that I watched this year, and it was entirely defensive. Like, they made Tennessee's life a living hell, and I hated to see them ousted from the tournament. But then again, I had this weird feeling like I'm enjoying Coach K's last last run, like the whole college basketball regular season. Like enough already with Coach K. Coach K's got a podcast. I'm hearing ads for it on our own station because they're running like Sirius XM Coach K podcast ads. I don't want that. Get it out of my life. And yet last night I was drawn to it. I was locked in on the whole experience, and then all of the other results, whether it was Gonzaga being ousted as the final number 1 seed. You look at Villanova, who's able to advance. They take out Michigan, who somehow Michigan ended up being some kind of underdog where they should never, ever in any kind of athletics be an underdog. And then Houston getting back into the Elite Eight again is, it's one of the more impressive feats to see how Kelvin Sampson has turned that basketball program around. And, you're looking at 2 2 seeds, a 5 and a 4. Remaining so far in that side of the Elite Eight, and we will see what results bear out tonight. Certainly, college basketball is getting ready to hit its peak. I would love to see the Peacocks, the mighty Peacocks of St. Peter's. I would love to see them take a hatchet to Purdue tonight. That would make me very happy. I would love to see, well, I guess Kansas is still in it. Kansas is a 1 seed. I forgot about Kansas.
So you want Duke to go all the way?
Yeah, I think here's what I'll say, okay? Because I think this is where this is coming from. I think as we're talking about, this show is basically like 3 hours of what my therapist feels like. It's just me externalizing all my internal thoughts. I think that Coach K, I want this to end in the championship game. I don't necessarily he doesn't need to win it, but however this goes down, it needs to be Mike Krzyzewski in the title game. And whether he wins or whether he loses is going to be the kind of, final leg of the season, the final chapter in this story of the college basketball season, of which Coach K is a featured part of so many volumes across decades of college basketball and one of the most important figures in that sport. But I don't care if he wins. I'm certainly not going to be upset if he loses, but I want it to end in the championship game.
How about a Final Four loss to UNC?
Please, everyone be quiet.
Sorry, Coach. Yeah, Coach K doesn't like that. He's telling you to simmer down. What was that, Coach? Sorry. Even the idea of UNC?
Please, everyone be quiet.
Yeah, that's right. UNC. It would matter for people who are fans of, big fans of that rivalry, and for people who care about college basketball rivalries like that. But otherwise, I would prefer to see Coach K win or lose in the title game. I'm sure most people don't feel that way. 615-737-1045. Puka says in the YouTube chat, where you can live stream the show, hang out with us in the studio if you like, Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Puka's on YouTube, and she says, you all be nice to Lucas today. He had a rough night with Italy. What happened? 2 straight World Cups they're going to miss.
A completely unfathomable and inexcusable disaster debacle is what happened yesterday with Italy.
A scoreless draw, 0-0 against Mexico for the United States last night, by the way, in their World Cup qualifier. So what needs to happen? We'll do our U.S. Soccer Minute here, and then we'll move on with our day, get to some Robert Woods conversation and Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel, because spring ball is underway, and I've been neglecting to talk about it for basically 3 days at this point. What happened with USA Soccer last night?
Yeah, missed some really good chances in front of the goal, but hard to be upset about taking away a point at Mexico in a qualifier. All you got to do is win against Panama on Sunday, and you're in, which would be a consolation for me after the debacle of yesterday.
Well, that's the USA Soccer Minute. I'm sure we'll have updates later on. Walker Zimmerman played a hell of a game, though.
Yes, he did.
He
has become a fixture.
Which is, listen, if you're looking for a local tie, there's your boy. When we come back, though, we'll talk to the Tennessee beat writer for the Knoxville News Sentinel. That's Adam Sparks. It's our guy. And we're going to talk about spring ball on the other side. Welcome back. Football Friday without any football. What are we going to do? Spring football, though, it's in the air. In East Tennessee, at the very least, spring practice got underway this week. Lucas has been basically prodding me with a cattle prod to try and get me to talk about it all week long, shaking a fist at the sky, saying you'll spend 3 straight weeks on OTAs, but you won't talk about spring practice. So I said, all right, call Adam Sparks. We'll talk spring ball today. Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel joins us now. What's up, buddy?
Pretty good. Are you saying that we can't determine a team's record in March? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Adam, we can't determine a team's record in March. We can't do it in August. We can't do it in October. Like the whole record prediction thing is a suffering unto itself in this industry. But I'm going to keep fighting that battle every day, even though I'm going to lose every time. So you can obviously read Adam, knoxnews.com, for all of the great journalism that's being done by him and his colleagues there, specifically on the University of Tennessee, of course. How much of what we saw in the end of their season here in Nashville against Purdue, where they gave up over 500 yards passing, how much of that is like the stark reality of what this secondary faces heading into 2022?
Yeah, that's the biggest area that I'm looking at. I can pick out a lot of positives to say that the team that won 7 games last year could win 8 or 9 next year, but the biggest thing that tells me that there's a possibility they could be about the same is that pass defense. Statistically, it was the worst in the SEC. Like you said, you saw the worst of it in the Music City Bowl. I think the most alarming thing about the Music City Bowl, when they gave up over 500 yards passing, was that Alante Taylor did not play in that game because he was going into the draft. Well, he's not here now. So that was a little bit of a preview of what you have coming back, and it wasn't good. I think maybe the more concerning thing to me right now is that I don't know that it's going to get any better in spring because they have 4 corners out with injuries right now. Their returning starter, Warren Burrell, is limited by injury. The 3 guys that were going to compete for the other starting corner spot, Kamal Haddon, Brandon Turnage, Deshaun Rucker, they're all out with injuries. So even though your biggest concern is at cornerback, you've got safeties and nickels and whatever they can piece together to fill those spots right now. And there's a double whammy there that they're trying to figure out who their other receivers are besides Cedric Tillman. And those wide receivers fighting for that position are going up against corners that aren't really corners. Yeah. So it slows progress. I will say maybe the biggest silver lining of it, if you want to pick one out, is that Desmond Williams, their junior college corner that they brought in to kind of compete for that spot, he's now getting as many reps as he wants because he's about the only scholarship corner over there.
That's not exactly what Vols fans want to hear after so many of them came to Nashville and saw the way that situation went down without Alante Taylor, even though Theo Jackson did play in that game and the passing defense was still an unholy mess. With this situation, and you mentioned the junior transfer, why have they not been? Has there been any explanation given? Has it come up at all in press conferences with Heupel or the rest of his staff? Why are they not nearly as active as everybody else in the transfer portal?
Well, I mean, some of that is scholarship reductions. They had self-imposed scholarship cuts a year ago. We have pretty good reason to believe that they're cutting a few scholarships this time. I did ask Heupel on the record in his office not too long ago about their philosophy in the transfer portal compared to others, and he said they absolutely have to be so selective that they have to get guys that they feel like can start, that will for sure start. You can't go get guys in the portal for depth or to give them a shot or to try them out or to roll the dice. It's got to be this guy can come in and has a good chance to start for us, be in the rotation from day one. And that's because the scholarships are trimmed. Right now, I think they're at 80. You get 85. So it depends on if they want to cut 2 or 5 or 7 or whatever of how much room you have. I do think they'll probably add maybe 2 more in the portal. You could also lose 2 or 3. Usually you have some guys that leave after spring once they figure out their 3rd or 4th string. So you could have that go on. Quincy Riley, the corner at MTSU, All Conference USA, first-team guy, one of the better corners in the transfer portal. He's taking a visit here. He's near the top of their list. He would certainly be a guy that could come in and will probably start. If not start, he would certainly be in the rotation. And so they're looking at him. He's a possibility. On the other side, the wide receivers that I mentioned, Brew McCoy is coming in this weekend. He's a guy that was at USC, former five-star guy. Had some trouble on campus, was suspended or removed from the team at USC, was not criminally charged in the investigation, but does have some baggage, and they'll have to work through that. But that tells you if they've got transfer portal guys coming in that they at least are open to the possibility of adding a couple of guys.
Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel here with us talking Vols spring ball on 104.5 The Zone. At Adam Sparks is where you can follow him and get all of his great work at knoxnews.com. So, I mean, this week started with a bang for Tennessee with quarterback Nico Iamaleava, who I'm shocked that I'm still able to pronounce his name after being 3 days removed from practicing it in a mirror. He commits to the university for 2023. Now, there's no pen to paper or anything like that. But they also have Tavin Jackson, freshman quarterback, 4-star out of my home state, the state of my youth, the state of my birth, Indiana. He comes into spring practice with, I mean, precious little buzz because there's, or at least from our standpoint, Adam, I hope that you'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong about that, but there's no reason to think that he will legitimately push Hendon Hooker, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Tavin Jackson he's in a pretty precarious spot with Nico committing because I think if you didn't get Nico, the 5-star kid, if you didn't get him, then Tavin Jackson is a developmental guy. He has really good talent. Like you mentioned, he's a 4-star kid. That's the type of player at a Power 5 school that you sign, you redshirt, you develop, and depending on that development, he can push to play redshirt freshman, sophomore year at the earliest. With Nico now committing, his clock has to speed up. Now, we don't know these guys personally. Some of these guys say, hey, I just want to be at the school for my whole career, and I want to compete, and I believe at one point it'll be my job. But, we're in the transfer portal era, and so if you're a really good quarterback, as UT learned the last couple of years, if you're a 4-star type quarterback, you come in and you end up second or third string, you're going to transfer to go somewhere else. And Tavin Jackson would maybe be, look at that if he's like other guys. And so if Nico had not come, he could develop and take his time. Now that Nico is coming, this year is important for him because he'll be probably number 3 going into the fall behind Hooker and Joe Milton. If he finishes this season as the number 3 quarterback, has he really taken advantage of that 1-year head start that he has on Nico? You almost think they're even at best
right
when Nico comes in next spring. But if he can jump over Joe Milton and be the number 2 quarterback by the end of the season, then that's the coaching staff saying, we think maybe you could play sooner than later. Maybe he has a half a step ahead of Nico when he gets to campus to compete for that job next year.
Certainly be interesting to watch. On Hendon Hooker, there's a lot of excitement about the University of Tennessee and the football program in ways that it just hasn't felt like for quite some time. Certainly the commitment of Nico has something to do with that, but also because of how things, understanding that the bowl game didn't go the way that they wanted to, the offense has a lot of promise. Now, at some point, they have to do something about the defense because you can score all the points that you want. You can't stop anybody. It's not going to make any bit of difference. But at this point, what is a reasonable expectation for Hendon Hooker moving into 2022? Because I feel like a lot of these Vols fans are getting gaslit on the internet, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the Heisman hype and that sort of thing. That's fine. Anybody that puts up a lot of big numbers at an SEC school quarterback can have that type of preseason hype. That's fine. I think reasonable expectations is that he did what he did last year, but over 12 games. I mean, it wasn't really his job till about the 3rd game. If he's the guy the whole time, they probably beat Pitt, so they have an extra win. I mean, he had the best completion percentage, best passing efficiency in UT history. This is not a guy that's going to throw for 400 yards a game. He only topped 300, I think, twice last year. One was in the bowl game. He's a guy that's going to, throw for 280, 300. He's going to run for about 50, and he's going to throw no interceptions, and that's all they can ask for. And I don't think he has to be better than last year. I think he just has to do what he did last year and take advantage of the pieces they put around him. They still have to find some wide receivers. They've got to find a right tackle. They're so-so in the backfield. So there's some things that they need to fix around him. I think Hendon Hooker will be the classic case of, don't try to do more than what you are. And I think that's what made him good last year. He's got a good head on his shoulders. I don't think he'll do this, but he certainly doesn't need to go into the year and say, I threw for 280 last year. Now I've got to go throw for 380. He can't be that type. He has to be very game manager and take advantage of what this offense is.
It turns out that was hugely successful for him last year. There's no reason why there should be a need to deviate from the formula, but we all know how expectations can warp things. Have you been have you been grilled about the new Vandy logo yet? Has anybody done that to you yet?
I didn't quite understand it when it came out. I was a little shocked that the star wasn't there. The star, which is half of the star V, is pretty important to people. I think I saw that tweaked after the fact. Is there ever a logo that's announced that people say, hey, I'm really glad they changed what I was used to?
No, but this is the one thing that doesn't need to be changed about their athletic department, Adam. It's the one thing. It's the only thing.
I mean,
that's my opinion. Not to put you out there like that. I know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Also, how different is it? I mean, I looked at it and I thought, how different is it? It's a V. It's a different font. It's a fat V. It was a thin V. Is that it? I roll my eyes usually at things like this, but you just have to weather the storm if you really want to make that change. I don't know quite what the meeting is there when they're sitting around and say, hey, well, what do we need to get done this year? I think we've got to change the logo. That would have been probably far down my list, but is what it is.
It's just an identity crisis. This is what all sports fans go through. Adam Sparks, never in crisis of identity, always doing great journalism at knoxnews.com, where you can read all of his coverage on the Vols as spring practice gets further and further in and as we get closer to football time in Tennessee. Thank you, buddy.
We'll see you.
That's Adam Sparks, Knoxville News Sentinel. That's a very rational approach to the logo.
It was, yes.
I disagree. I disagree vehemently. It's like Vandy. The last thing that Vandy needs is an identity crisis. The last thing you need is you getting mixed up with Virginia or Virginia Tech or Villanova or every other, just standard V of various sizes and shapes. The Star V works. All right, I'm done. No more logo talk this week. I promise. But the Hendon Hooker portion of the conversation, I think, is fascinating because we're starting to get tweets about this, like D. Lee 1385. You can tweet us at Buck Reising, at Lucas Panzica on Twitter. Why on God's green earth, he says, would Milton be taking a roster spot on this team? Is that if there is a kid that is better and he is stealing reps, how is that man going to get better? Well, for the same reason that he started your season last year. They obviously think that he can do some damage, right? Like Joe Milton, here's what we do. And it's completely unfair to people like Joe Milton. Even as Joe Milton, the decision to bench him was correct. Everybody understands this. Nobody is saying that Joe Milton, throughout the course of the season, would have given them a better chance to win more football games. In fact, cost them opportunities to win football games that were infinitely winnable. Joe Milton was that guy. Fair. But do not dismiss Joe Milton outright. Do not go to the extremes on that just because you got frustrated because he straight up overthrew 6 touchdowns throughout the course of his couple of games starting the season. What did he? Three total starts, I believe, as the Tennessee quarterback. So I get why people have a visceral reaction. We did this to JG too, Jarrett Garantano, but I mean, with Garantano, there was no other option. Like, you had to ride it out with JG, and you knew that was going to feel bad at certain points. Like, you went into those games ready to take your lumps, and then you would do the thing that people do on the internet to athletes when they're displeased, which is, publicly shame them and completely forgetting that they're college students and not professionals, even though they're closer to professionals now than they've ever been. I'm not saying that Joe Milton deserves the second. It's not like he's entrenched in that quarterback position. And I understand that you're bringing in a talented 4-star recruit at the quarterback position as a true freshman whose situation just got infinitely more complicated because of the 2023 5-star commit in Nico Iamaleava. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on this conversation if you like. The Hendon Hooker for Heisman thing, though, we gotta like chill out, right? Like, because I feel like Steve Wilfong, who came on the radio show earlier this week. He's the director of recruiting services for 24/7 Sports. He gave you great analysis about the situation for Nico. And coming in, he said it's a fantastic time to be a Tennessee fan. You guys deserve that. You deserve to enjoy the offseason because you have legitimate expectations, hope, and a proof of concept. Like what Josh Heupel does is going to work more often than not. Now, how you take the next steps remains to be seen. But let's not immediately just in the same breath as we're jumping to extremes on Joe Milton. Let's not do that with Hendon Hooker too. Hendon Hooker is a good player within the scheme. They can maximize what Hendon Hooker is in ways that were never possible at Virginia Tech, right? Like what we saw of Hendon Hooker last year made you feel like you could have above average to high level quarterback play in a way that, when's the last time you've had quarterback play that felt like that, Lucas?
Josh Dobbs.
Been since Dobbs. And that is one of the best names that you could possibly throw out there. But let's not do, how far away was Dobbs? We would have to go back, and I can't remember exactly. Dobbs was never a Heisman candidate, even as he was a spectacular talent at the position and playing at a high level under a coach that wasn't very good.
Yeah, there might have been some buzz heading into the 2016 season, a lot of hype around Tennessee coming off a 9-win year, Alvin Kamara, Jalen Hurd, Joshua Dobbs, but never once was he considered a serious Heisman candidate.
Right, so if you want to give me top, 3 quarterback in the SEC, I'll play that game with you. And listen, maybe that earns you Heisman consideration because of the caliber of talent in the conference and because of the position that he plays. But let's just breathe, okay? Breathe. Have reasonable expectations for this player who is coming into not even a full year 2 as your starting quarterback and who blew you away with just how much he exceeded your initial expectations. Don't then blow them out of the water to where you're going to be infinitely disappointed if he doesn't achieve at the level that you think that he should. Jeremy is in Nashville, wants to chime in on the Vols. What's up, Jeremy?
Hey, Buck. I have to disagree with you about the Joe Milton thing.
Please do.
Joe Milton does not deserve a roster spot simply because of the one play in the last seconds of the Ole Miss game where he ran out of bounds him on the spot. That, in and of itself, is, hey, you're done, son.
Oh, God, it's so true. Thank you for the call, Jeremy.
It was really bad.
He's not wrong. That was really, really bad. Is that worse than it's not worse than the overthrown touchdowns. Like the overthrown touchdowns, as somebody who watches these objectively, it's my job to watch Tennessee when Tennessee plays because I know we're going to talk about Tennessee. It's not like I don't enjoy it, but it was much more enjoyable this year because they were actually fun to watch. It hurt me in my soul for all of you who live and die on every snap of Tennessee football, every overthrow that Joe Milton had.
But the running out of bounds was worse because it was literally
worse than the touchdowns.
It was literally
worse than costing you the Pitt game.
Well, a worse decision, sure. It was literally the one thing you could do in that moment that would not win you that game. That would give you zero chance to win that game was run out of bounds with zeros on the clock, other than just put it in the end zone. It is hard to envision an opening for Joe Milton to start at any point, barring injury, obviously.
Oh, sure, not to start.
Sure, because even next season when Hendon Hooker's out, Milton maybe is the experienced guy on the roster, but you're going to have a 4-star and a 5-star prospect nipping at your heels, and then, how much does the pressure get on one of those guys to get a starting nod before they look to move elsewhere? So, one of these 3 guys will not be on Tennessee's roster, come 2023, right? Between Joe Milton, Tavin Jackson, and Nico Iamaleava.
I tried to tell people about the Joe Milton thing. Nobody wanted to listen to me until 3 games in. And
although,
Joe Milton's
in an era of college football where having a quality backup quarterback is almost non-existent because of the transfer portal, Joe Milton, you could do worse as an option at backup quarterback.
You certainly could, and he's at least got game experience, so maybe that makes you feel a tad better. When we come back, Lucas got an SEC stat of the day. We'll do that coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Do we know what A.J. Brown and Derek Mason are fighting about on Twitter? We have no idea. I've been getting texts about this all morning. We'll have to talk about that at some point, I suppose. Some idiot. Well, that's super rude. Let me reel it back in. There is currently a dispute between what is probably the best Titans, like in the Titans era. Derek Mason is the best Titans receiver in the history of the franchise, yeah?
Yes, right now he is.
Yeah, and AJ's probably going to take that from him at some point.
If he continues at this rate, yes.
So you have the best and likely soon to be best players at that position in the history of the franchise feuding on social media today. I don't know what that's about, but apparently Derek is alleging that AJ doesn't like Tannehill. So we'll talk about that.
Because of the tweet about Mariota being a leader?
Oh, is it? It's about Mario? Oh, my God. Please tell me that's what it's about.
I would imagine that's what it's about.
You're kidding me.
Calling Mariota the best leader he's ever been around?
AJ said that on Twitter after Marcus signed with the Falcons. Right. All right. I'll do some digging during the next commercial break and we'll find out. But I'm laughing out loud because somebody named Ron Vargas Jr. has responded to AJ's tweet and says, please, talking about AJ, please trade him already. His act is getting tiresome this offseason. #diva. I don't even have the energy for that today. I just don't.
The tweet thing is ridiculous.
Oh, sure.
If you tell me you like Mexican food, does that mean I turn around and say, oh, Buck hates Italian food?
I mean, you should probably do that. I mean, that would be a great way to, get people to dislike me and up your Q rating personally. I think that would go a long way for you. I don't know. I'll text Derek during the break or something like that. I don't know what he's doing on social media. Anyway. Speaking of the Tennessee quarterback situation, we've had some comments on this in the Zone TV chat. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the phones, if you so choose. But William Titan, who I believe is our lone Kentucky fan, brave enough to hang out in the chat, says verbal commitments don't mean squat. Kids have no loyalty these days, ? You Tennessee fans actually expect him to not, talking about Nico Iamaleava, you Tennessee fans actually expect him to not decommit before signing period? If I were y'all, I'd hold my breath. Well, I mean, sure, but you can't live in that space. You have to operate as if he's going to honor his commitment. And yes, I understand that that the high school recruits have no loyalty these days, nor do I care that the high school recruits have no loyalty to some logo, right? For all the fun that we've made of Vandy's logo, like, I don't give a damn how you feel about the Power T, the Star V. I don't even know what you'd call Indiana's logo other than an I and a U. Like, I don't care if you're not loyal to letters. That doesn't bother me. Nor does it bother me that kids don't share the passion that grown adults, grown men and women do, and then they shame the kids about not having that same kind of loyalty. It's one of the most, honestly, for the longest, until I moved into SEC country, like, that was one of the biggest turnoffs about college football for me. Like, I did not understand why people, especially in the recruiting process, because you see people, like, I'd see every once in a while people tweeting at high school kids, like yelling at them because they've flipped their commitment or something like that. The
worst.
Decommitted. It is repulsive to me. So no, I don't care that he's not loyal. No, if he leaves, I hope he does it to a better situation. Go make your money now that you can make money, and go play in a place that's going to offer you the best opportunity to succeed. What I like to see, what most people are calling the next Marcus Mariota in college football, play at one of the schools that I am tasked with talking about on a regular basis. Of course, I would very much enjoy watching that on Saturdays, as opposed to, Jarrett Garantano, respectfully to JG. I would very much like that. But am I going to be pissed at him about it? No, I don't care. Let him live his life. All right, what's the SEC stat of the day?
The SEC stat of the day is the number 2. That is the amount of Elite Eights that Arkansas basketball has made in the last 2 years. That's also one more Elite Eight than the University of Tennessee has made in its existence as a basketball program. This is not me trying to bash Rick Barnes. Tennessee extended him this week, and deservedly so, coming off an SEC tournament championship. Really, it's me praising Eric Musselman and the job that he's done in year 2 at Arkansas, going back-to-back in the Elite Eight. He is now a game away from the Final Four, and they take on Duke, right?
They will play Duke. They will play Duke. So it's the muscle man, everybody's hero, shirtless, slinged up Eric Musselman, even though he's out of the sling now.
I do love Eric Musselman.
Well, yeah, because he seems to love this as much as we do, which makes me very
Well,
happy.
he seems psychotic in his celebration of post-game big victories when he's in front of the fan base, waving around shirtless, like just his eyes bugging out of his head. Like, that is a guy that can energize a fan base.
Sure. And, I mean, clearly it's worked. He's done – I loved him at Nevada. I'm sure I've said it wrong. But he was a great hire by Arkansas. And I saw a conversation on the internet this morning about, is Arkansas a better athletic department modern day than Tennessee? And I can't find anywhere to dispute that, right? Like, there's nothing to indicate. Basketball, they have been more successful than Rick Barnes at Tennessee, even as Rick Barnes has had them perpetually, in the conversation, I guess.
In the tournament, they've been more successful, yes.
Yes, sure. And in the regular season is tough, right? Who did we have on earlier in the week that Casey Alexander, Belmont's head coach, who was talking about, it is much more difficult to sustain in the regular season than people think it is. Like, that's not just some kind of thing that you should take for granted. And sure, but also, make it out of the first weekend one time.
Yeah, sure. No, it's totally fair. You have to weigh those two things. As far as sustained success and recruiting and championships, it leans towards Rick Barnes and what he's done at Tennessee. But as far as, advancing in the tournament, obviously back-to-back Elite Eights is more than what Rick Barnes has been able to do at Tennessee.
Arkansas football a better program than Tennessee?
Well, I mean, right now, yeah, because Arkansas was 9-4, Tennessee was 7-6, right? I mean, right now, on what happened in 2021, yes. But
there was a period of time when Arkansas went like 2 years without winning an SEC
Sure,
game.
And then there's also a matter of the ceiling, right? Arkansas is not a program that you think has a national championship ceiling because we've never seen that before. With Tennessee, you have. So in the totality of the programs, who's got more money, more recruiting resources, NIL resources, more history, obviously it's Tennessee. But right now, yeah, Arkansas. Arkansas is a better football team right now. They went 9-4. Tennessee went 7-6. It's pretty simple, no?
Baseball?
Baseball this season, Tennessee's a better team. Last year, Arkansas beat Tennessee in the SEC championship game, did not get to the College World Series. They lost to NC State, I want to say.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, right there neck and neck. Arkansas is a very established program. Obviously, Tony Vitello, a product of the Arkansas coaching tree.
Sure. Big series, by the way, this weekend for Tony Vitello and the Tennessee Baseballs. They have Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin throwing out the first pitch.
Well done, Ole Miss.
No, well done, Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin has to be willing to do these things. Not well done, Ole Miss. Well done, Lane Kiffin, for not being such a tight ass the way that every other coach perpetually across sports, except honestly Tony Vitello, seems to be. Like that. Well done, Lane Kiffin.
It is a huge matchup, top 3 matchup.
It'll be good. I regret that we haven't spent more time on it. But when we come back, we're going to talk about a really, really good interview that my colleague at A to Z Sports, Austin Stanley, did with a physical therapist, a local physical therapist here, about what the timeline for Robert Woods and ACL recovery will be. And it's positive news. We're going to play you a portion of that coming up next, and then we'll talk about what the expectations need to be for your new wide receiver number 2. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:02. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. Day one of the Sweet 16 is behind us, and the only SEC team left in the NCAA tournament stays alive as Arkansas knocked off top-seeded Gonzaga 74-68. The Zags, not the only one seed to go down. 5-seed Houston defeating Arizona 72-60. Villanova able to get past Michigan, and Duke surviving Texas Tech with a 78-73 win to send Coach K's final tournament run into the Elite Eight. The Sweet 16 action continues today. You can hear it all right here on 104.5 The Zone, courtesy of Westwood One. Former Titans linebacker Jayon Brown has been signed by the Las Vegas Raiders as an unrestricted free agent. The former fifth-round pick spent the last 5 years playing for the Titans, led the team in tackles in 2019. And new Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson will once again avoid criminal charges as a second grand jury in Texas declined to indict him after considering an accusation of sexual misconduct. Watson will speak to the media for the first time as a Cleveland Brown today at noon. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once. Your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2, welcome in, welcome back. If you've been hanging out with us on this Friday, we're happy to have you guys in for today's show. Got a lot to discuss, get into some Titans topics here with a little bit of some analysis on the recovery of Robert Woods from his clean, in his own words, ACL tear. Lucas is back there making it happen. Your phone calls are welcome, 615-737-1045. We got Coach Mack here in about 15 minutes as well. I'd love to get his insights and analysis on how this makes things go for the Titans. But in the meantime, I want to talk about Robert Woods. So this ACL tear, it's the subject of a lot of discussion. You get a fantastic player throughout the course of his career on a reasonable contract for nothing more than a 2023 sixth-round pick. That's pretty damn good, kids. I had some people fighting with me on social media saying, you know, since when have sixth-round draft picks contributed to football teams? And my response was, well, most recently David Long has just taken the job of Jayon Brown, making him disposable. Shout out to Jayon for signing a new deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. I know that's a fan favorite, and one of the guys who I was fortunate enough to work with, one of the first guys that I was fortunate enough to work with when I started working down here. So hate to see Jayon go. Always a good guy to deal with, but no one's replaceable, and they did it out of the sixth round. So, like, don't sleep on the sixth-round picks. They've had a couple that have panned out in ways, more ways than sixth-round picks should. Jason McCourty, David Long, Bo Scaife, way back when. Like, they've had competent starters come out of the sixth round. So, like, draft capital, you can turn your nose up at it if you like, but still, it's a good value for a proven player, right? That's kind of the Rams formula. Give up draft picks for proven players, and this one comes at a bit of a discount because of the ACL tear. So this situation where he feels super optimistic about it, he has expressed optimism both in his prior to or right after tearing the ACL, and then again in press conferences. What was that, on Wednesday, when we heard from Robert Woods in his first press conference as a Titan? But he is somebody who is going to be under a fair amount of scrutiny because Titans fans are naturally jaded towards bringing in players at a discount, dealing with injury. But I want you to hear Robert Woods talk about how he came to tear his ACL and what his rehabilitation process has been like, and then we'll get into some analysis of why it is trending in the right direction for you as a Titans fan.
Yeah, it shocked me. Obviously, I was running with the ball, tried to make a cut, fell down, went to the other field, ran, cut, jogged, and thought I was fine. And then when I got the news that it was a tore ACL, it was shocking. Didn't know that it was that. And obviously, as a receiver, you get that injury, you're like, oh no, it's coming to an end. And then literally just being able to recover and feel good, knowing that it wasn't that serious, is thrilling for me just to be able to come back. I feel like I'm in the middle of my career. So really just my thing is just getting back as strong as I can, pick back up where I left off, and add some more strength and power to this knee.
That's Robert Woods on Wednesday speaking with the media about his ACL tear, a clean ACL tear, as he described it. So my buddy Austin Stanley at A to Z Sports, he's the A in A to Z, where I also do the streaming show Sunday to Thursday night, primetime, 8 p.m. Central Time, if you want to hang out with us on the internet. He does these regular doc talks with different people, different physicians and physical therapists on athletes' injuries at the Bone and Joint Institute in Franklin. Now, the full interview is up on the A to Z Sports YouTube page, but I wanted you to hear from Dave Kempfert, who is their director of physical therapy at the Bone and Joint Institute, because Austin did an interview with him yesterday. Now, here's what I want you to know on the front end before we play this interview for you. He does not have specific knowledge of Robert Woods' knee. Like, he was not the one who did the surgery on Robert Woods. He is speaking overall as an expert on ACL recovery. So I want you to hear from, it's not doctor if you're a physical therapist, is it? I don't know. Either way, Dave Kempfert of the Bone and Joint Institute in Franklin.
Yeah, and thanks for making that point. So I know nothing about his individual case. I want to make that really clear. Right. But when we do talk about a clean tear of the ACL, so there's lots of other structures in your knee, obviously, that can be damaged. And so if you do get an ACL tear, as awful as that is and debilitating as is for a short period of time here, the good thing is that it sounds like, other structures weren't injured that could delay his process of healing or lead to a worse knee kind of prognosis for him down the road. So some of those structures, and a lot of these people have heard of before, but you have structures on the inside of your knee called the MCL, and you have a structure on the outside of your knee called the LCL, or the medial and lateral collateral ligaments. Those kind of help stabilize your knee from the forces that might gap the inside or gap the outside of your knee. There's obviously a lot of people have heard of this, but your meniscus cartilage, okay? And so meniscus cartilage, there's a medial and a lateral meniscus. And so we talked kind of earlier about the different positions and body types and those type of things. So the meniscus help not only with shock absorption, but with lubrication, proper movement of the knee. And what happens is if you tear a meniscus, then a lot of times they have to go in and clean up that meniscus or repair that meniscus. And so if they do a repair of the meniscus, what happens is sometimes your initial weight bearing, your initial strengthening, your initial range of motion has to be limited to wait for that to heal. So the good thing is if your meniscus doesn't come out with an injury that needed to be repaired, or they didn't actually have to take out some of your meniscus, a lot of times you have a little less pain, a little less swelling. You can progress a little faster through a protocol getting back to activity than you would otherwise.
That's Dave Kempfert of the Bone and Joint Institute in Franklin. The full interview, again, available at A to Z Sports Nashville's YouTube channel, so you can go check that out if you like, with my buddy Austin Stanley there. So here's kind of the question, right? How much different is the clean ACL tear, as Robert Woods has described and Dave Kempfert just kind of outlined for you, when he's talking about how much the MCL, if it is affected, how much does that have to do with what, for example, Taylor Lewan and Bud Dupree went through last year, where you're talking about limited range of motion? It's going to take a little longer for you to get back up to top speed, top strength, all the things that you need to cut and plant and do the things that professional athletes need to do on a football field. Does this mean that there will be a little less of a, waiting period for Robert Woods to be, all right, get out there. If you're out on the field, let's go. And we're not going to have any setbacks like where Lewan and Dupree are dressed out for games, but they don't play them, right? That happened once for each of those guys, where Vrabel dressed them out, had them go through warmups, and then didn't have them participate in the game. Because, as Mike Vrabel put it during those games, I can't remember which game specifically that happened in, but there was one for Lewan and one for Bud Dupree throughout the course of last season, where Mike said they were available in an emergency capacity only, but that they were taking up a 46-man active game day roster spot. So, if you had to throw them out there, they could go. but at what point was that going to be to the detriment of the player? I don't know that you're going to have that with Robert Woods. And again, I'm not espousing any kind of medical opinion here, because that would be far beyond my qualifications, which is why we played that audio of Dave Kempfert for you. But I do think it gives you a little more. It can give you a little more hope that the idea that you won't have to go through all the trial and error of, all right, the starting left tackle and the $16 million a year, $16.5 million a year outside linebacker, they're going to be basically a week-to-week proposition for the first half of the year, because that's what it felt like with Taylor and Bud. Robert Woods, it does not sound like, because of the nature of the ACL tear, where there were no other ligaments affected within the knee that are going to cause you additional stress and strain as you rehabilitate. That's good news if you're a Titans fan. But I want to hear from you, 615-737-1045. What are your expectations for Robert Woods in year one? We outlined yesterday why I think he's I think he's everything that you wanted Corey Davis to be. We did that on the radio show yesterday. And then we went through all the X's and O's implications of what Robert Woods provides to this offense. We're going to talk about that with Coach Dave McGinnis coming up next. All right, let's do it. It's a Friday. It's 11:20. The man in black, Coach Mack, that's his music. Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio here with us on behalf of Farm Bureau Health Plans, like an extra set of pads since 1947. They've been protecting Tennesseans. Coach Mack, always a pleasure to have him on the show. What's up, boss?
Hey, Buck. Missed you last week because of the tournament. Good to be back on with you.
Now, listen, you can't – I appreciate the kind words, Mac, but like a Friday off isn't the worst thing in the world. You're talking – I don't know how much more guru stuff, we'll call it, that you ended up doing that day, but, like, I feel like we got to give you a Friday every once in a while.
Well, Buck, I mean, it's not exactly like I'm doing hard labor anymore, so I'm fine.
Okay. Well, we love to hear that. Hard labor is what it's going to take to keep up in this AFC right now, and the Titans making a couple of moves to make sure that they stay very much in that conversation. I know you've talked about Robert Woods and Austin Hooper a couple of different times this week, Mac, and I'm sure not just on this station, but as far as maximizing offensive efficiency, how far do these two go in helping with that process?
Well, it helps. I mean, those are two positions of need. I mean, you needed a second receiver, clearly. You know, you needed that, and you needed a tight end. I mean, the tight end room was empty after the season was over, you know, because nobody was under contract. And then all of a sudden now you've got two. If you want to talk about Hooper first, I really like Hooper coming out a lot out of Stanford. I mean, this is a guy that will add quite a bit. The thing that happens now, Buck, and it's happening, and I know you'll ask me about some of these other players, the free agency and the way the salary cap was truncated 2 seasons ago, people are really still starting to see the effects of this around the league, and it's going to continue for a while until this thing gets back stabilized again. But anyway, both of these guys will help, you know, quite a bit. Now, you know, Robert Woods, I remember, you know, vetting Robert Woods in the draft that he came out. You know, there were several receivers, you know, quite a bit, in fact, that came out in that draft that he came out. This is an all-around player, and he's proven to be really, really a productive professional, you know, first in Buffalo and then clearly with the Rams. Now with the ACL injury, again, I've dealt with a lot of NFL players in my 31 years of coaching with ACL injuries. There's different degrees. I mean, I am no way near portraying myself as a medical expert,
sure,
but I have dealt with it on an NFL level with players for 31 years. And I do know from all the experts that I had available to me when I was coaching and asking them about each and every one. And first of all, they're all on individual cases because everybody recovers differently. Everybody rehabs at a different pace. I had Kyle Vandenbeis that had back-to-back ACLs on 2 separate legs his first 2 years in the league, and he ended up having a very productive career. And so, I mean, it's all to the individual. It's also the way the initial injury was. His, I think, was deemed a clean ACL tear because, I mean, I think he practiced and moved on it still even after, you know, the incident happened in practice up there in Thousand Oaks. And so a lot it's depends on the individual athlete, but everything medically that you hear about him, and I know they vetted him very closely before they ever, you know, made the deal that, you know, you should be very, very optimistic about it. Now, the worst thing you can do, Buck, and I know that you probably discourage your listeners from this, is put a timeline on anything because it's all so interdependent on the way that the individual body reacts to what's going on. But the way that the surgeries are now, especially for a clean ACL tear, and the advancements in the rehab that the ACL has made, especially from the first, you know, time I started doing this with professional athletes, you know, over 30 years ago, it's vastly different now.
Yeah, I've certainly cautioned against, you know, heightened or overwhelming expectations just based on the injury. But I did cackle a little bit, Mac, when he got up on the podium and said, yeah, they told me not to talk about timelines here. He was very much schooled in the Mike Vrabel Institute of Injury.
Well, there's no reason to talk about it because you don't know. I mean, there really is. I mean, it makes no sense because medically they don't put a timeline on it either. when you talk to them, behind closed doors. Because, as I said, going back to what I said, it depends on the individual case, and it depends on the individual's rehab and how each person's body responds to it.
See, nuggets like that are why you got to listen to Mac every time he's on these airwaves and wherever Coach Mac is talking, including the official Titans podcast and the Titans Amy and Coach Mac podcast, available wherever you get your podcast. Fantastic offseason content being produced by the Titans radio crew. So with Hooper, Mac, he's, Baker Mayfield obviously struggled last year in Cleveland due to injury. There was injuries all over the place, and they still found ways to kind of gut it out until, the bottom just kind of fell out in that division, and Cincinnati pulled away. But, how much of Austin Hooper's, I don't want to say disappointment in Cleveland, can be attributed to how the quarterback was kind of struggling there?
Well, Buck, you've been around this league long enough to know, and for our listeners, look, we've got sophisticated fans here. They've been around the National Football League for a long time here, and you players can either thrive or they can shrivel at different places and still be the same player, because it's such a team game, and it's, it really, you're interdependent on a whole lot of different pieces wherever you are. Austin Hooper, again, as I said, he came out in that draft. I've said this before, that I remember the draft. I mean, I can remember drafts. That was the Hunter Henry draft, right? It was Hunter Henry, it was he, and then it was Tyler Higbee, who we took when I was at the Rams at the time, because we were in the market for a tight end, and we had Austin Hooper we had him behind Hunter Henry. We weren't drafting high enough to get Henry, but we knew that we might have a chance at Hooper. He went in the second round, and then we got Tyler Higbee in the third. Austin Hooper does everything you want a tight end to do, especially in this offense. And so, I didn't follow what happened up there at Cleveland. I mean, we've got enough to follow here, with our team and who we have to play week to week. But the guy athletically, and really the person, because, I've vetted both of these guys and at combines when they were there, that they're both excellent character people, and to me, he had a little bit of I think, nobody gets through their whole career, completely clean as far as how you feel. But to me, he's a complete tight end, especially in this type of offense. So I was really, really happy that he was added to this roster, Buck.
And certainly for that price point, when you saw the money that was flying around, that's a pretty good value for a do-it-all tight end who fits well within this system, and the opportunity for him at only 27 years old to earn future big contracts either here or elsewhere, provided that he lives up to his role in this offense. Mac, how much does having Hooper with Swaim and wherever they choose, be it the draft or with veteran free agents still out there and available, we'll see how the rest of the offseason kind of plays out. How much does this allow them to kind of get back to that 12 personnel base offense that they like to run? It seems, and understanding that there were a million different reasons why last year looked the way that it did, but it felt like they got a little further away from what made them so successful in 19 and 20.
Well, I mean, every year is a little bit different, Buck, because just personnel changes. Free agency has brought that in the National Football League and the salary cap. You're going to have a different team every year. And so you're going to have to adjust your team every year according to what type of personnel you have and who's available at the time, right? I mean, this last season, is really quite an anomaly, because who was available after going through 91 people? There were times when I stepped out on that practice field on a Wednesday, and I had no idea who was coming out of that door, to practice.
Mac, I swear, I stood there with my roster trying to figure out who the hell was who. It was difficult for everybody last year.
And just put yourself in those coaches' places, just putting together a game plan every week. So anyway, they won 12 games doing that, which was a big accomplishment.
Sure.
So you're asking me as far as to what they will get back to, and they're still going to add to that position, Buck.
Yeah.
They will still add to that position, and so it's going to be interesting to see. And also, as you said, they're still going to probably add to that receiver position too, and to the offensive line. There's going to be different people playing and suiting up, in the two-tone blue this fall. But it depends on really how everybody develops and how everybody becomes to sync up through the OTAs and then through training camp, and then who's available. I mean, availability is going to make a big difference on what goes on. But if everybody is healthy and everybody's available, I think we'll see some different things because we'll have different people.
Coach Dave McGinnis here with us, Coach Mack of Titans Radio, of course, where you can hear him across the station throughout the course of the week on all 4 of the shows. He joins us every Friday at this time to talk some ball. So with health being the thing that nobody can predict, and we'll see wherever Robert Woods ends up being fully ready to go or as close to fully ready to go as humanly possible. He's such a technician at that position, Mac, because it's not like, I mean, he's obviously a high-level athlete to play in the pros. I don't want to diminish that, but he's not one of these crazy, like, freakish athlete wide receivers, but he does so much, or at least he did with Sean McVay calling that offense, that he presents matchup problems wherever he lines up. And in talking to Greg Cosell about him earlier this week, Mac, he said that Woods is more traditionally the Z wide receiver, and I wonder if you could expand on exactly what that means from a technical standpoint for the audience who will be curious to see how they will deploy this guy.
Yeah, well, Greg's right. I mean, you watch what he did at Buffalo, and then you watched how he was utilized at the Rams. They use him quite a bit at the Z. Z's usually the guy that's off the ball, to the multiple receiver side of the set, most of the time. And look, Sean McVay tried a lot of different things to get the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
So he was a guy that was in movement. The guy that's the X, I mean, we don't have to get into deep ball right now, but the guy that's the X, that's usually, away from the formation side is on the line of scrimmage. Okay. But anyway, Robert Woods is a guy that's been used in a multitude of ways. And he's a very accomplished player, and he's an accomplished player in a lot of facets. And I know that people sometimes, they kind of turn a deaf ear when people start talking about receivers blocking. But if you're going to be able to run the football, or if you're going to have run after catch, the guy that doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's got to be involved. He's got to be involved to be able to eliminate potential tacklers down the field. This guy does a very, very good job of that. So, yes, I mean, I've really liked his game since he came at SC. I liked what he was coming out of the draft. I liked him in Buffalo because here's a guy that you can utilize a lot of different ways, and he also is really, really adept at understanding the nuances of what his position is. He's a smart guy. I didn't hear his press conference. I'm sure that you did, but everybody that has heard it has told me, Mac, this really sounds like an intelligent player. Just very not only well spoken, but understands, as far as about what's going on with the game, and that really helps a lot.
Yeah, winning the press conference is something I usually put at a discount, but he was truly impressive in his meeting with Titans media. Coach Dave McGinnis here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Mac, I want to talk about free agency because it's been wild, obviously. But with a player who is leaving now, the Titans, Jayon Brown signing with the Las Vegas Raiders, they are as well equipped to handle attrition at that position as any other on the roster. With Zach Cunningham sticking around and David Long, you got Monty Rice, who I'm sure will, as his health gets back in order, will be able to contribute both in special teams and in snaps when he needs to, like he did last season. Jayon's a fan favorite, though, Mac, and I wonder, just for fans who hate to see a guy like that leave, you can't keep all of your best players, but just how comfortable are they in a position with who they still have on the roster?
Well, they did a nice job of layering that position. They really did. I mean, think about it. The way they had it layered, even when Jayon came in. Jayon was a fifth-round pick. Yeah. That came in and really, I betted him at UCLA. He came in as a coverage linebacker. I mean, that's what he did in college. He was a space linebacker, and through development and through good coaching and through some really dedicated work on his part, he became a good, being able to diagnose behind the ball linebacker, which you have to be able to do in this league. That's the biggest thing that linebackers have to do, is learn to train their eyes on the center guard triangle, learn to understand the nuances of route coverages, learn to understand the nuances of splits. A lot of things that they don't have to do in collegiate football. He worked on that, and look, Jayon's done a very nice job for himself. He's a fifth-round pick, so don't ever discount, third-day picks. He's a fifth-round pick that's on his third contract. I would say Jayon's done pretty well for Jayon.
There's no question about it. All right, Mac, this free agency thing, you're a very rational, reasonable person. You're not somebody who strikes me as like, the way that we all freak out about transactions in the NFL. You find out who's playing where, and then you figure out how they fit. But has there been any moment throughout the course of this particular offseason where you've been like, holy bleep, like this is kind of crazy how much movement, specifically at the quarterback position, that there's been?
Well, let me say this, Buck. I was, of course, I was at the combine for a whole week.
Sure.
And had I can't count the number of conversations, from daylight till dark that I had up there with a lot of different people, and everybody that I talked to, and pretty much the consensus around there, that people were expecting that this year for two reasons. First of all, you had some quarterbacks that had just reached a divorce point with their club, right? And then you also had, the salary cap that was getting ready to come in. And you had some big numbers that were getting ready to be, dispelled for quarterbacks. And you had some teams that had space in their cap, because they had not either spent up to it, or they had a young enough team, or they had a team that wasn't very good. Anyway, some of those things kind of meshed up this year. So people were pretty much expecting around the league on the inside that these moves were going to happen. Now, once they start moving, and of course, there's always a speculation, well, where is he going to go? Does he fit here? Look, I've been involved in a lot of trades, and you really don't know who's going to be traded for who until the deal is finally consummated. And there's a lot of conversations that go on. So the quarterbacks moving didn't surprise me a lot. What was a little bit of a surprise to me, or pretty eye-opening, was the numbers that the receivers starting to get.
Yeah.
And then with the receivers starting to get the bigger numbers, and look, don't get caught up in the numbers, because here's the thing. And I've done a lot of shows across the country. People say, well, Coach Mack, is he worth that much money? I said, he is to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like draft picks. Is he worth a number one draft pick? Well, if somebody takes him, he's worth a number one to them, and that's all it takes in the National Football League. I think the one that, when you really look at it, you go, wow, this is the way the league is now. Andy Reid didn't want to lose Tyreek Hill up there. He didn't want to lose him, but he couldn't pay him. He couldn't pay him. I mean, you can't pay premium prices to your best players all across the board right now. You're never, ever going to be able to do it anymore with the way the National Football League is set up structurally with the salary cap. You're just not going to be able to do it. And so, you reach a tipping point. I mean, Bill Walsh was very good at this, and the best teams are, and the best managements are, you reach a tipping point as to where it's much more favorable for you as far as recompense, even though it's painful to lose a guy a year too early than it is a year too late. And so what they got for Tyreek Hill from Miami's in a position where, they've got to do something. They've had a lot of issues down there. And so, to me, that was one that worked out. He's from there. There was a lot of things going in that favor. But the biggest thing going in the favor, just remember, the best recruiter in the National Football League has and always will be George Washington. And that's always going to be the case.
Amen. You love that dollar sign. Coach Dave McGinnis, always a pleasure to have him as a part of the show. You can hear Mac across the station all week long, the OTP and the Titans Amy and Coach Mac podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Mac, have a great weekend, buddy. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Buck. It's always great being on with you. See you.
That's the man, Coach Mac, with us every Friday at 11:20. 615-737-1045. Jump in on the conversation if you like. We will. We had a big discussion yesterday about Deshaun Watson, and I have been going back and forth on this, Lucas, as to whether he's going to speak to the media at noon our time. Are we going to carry the Deshaun Watson press conference? Because I feel like we need to.
Yeah, I believe we will.
Okay. Well, that's the executive producer making an executive decision. So we will discuss the implications of what this free agency has done and the latest on Deshaun Watson, as we discussed yesterday. There has since then been updates. That's next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Go to springhillac.com.
Certainly is. Welcome back on this Friday. Hope your Friday is off to a great start, or if it hasn't been, admittedly, mine was not. I don't know why. I still don't have an explanation for the weird kind of funk I was in when I walked in here today, but so far, so good. Keeping things rolling. Jump in if you like. 615-737-1045. So speaking of lighthearted fare, Deshaun Watson. Going to carry his press conference. Everybody apparently is carrying his press conference. I've got live shots of SportsCenter panning to the Cleveland Browns press conference room where he is getting ready to be introduced to the Cleveland and national media because he was the second grand jury that we discussed yesterday as I was having my, I'm kind of disgusted with the Cleveland Browns moment, Deshaun Watson aside, situation. The reporting from the New York Times yesterday was that a second grand jury in a different county in Texas had interest in bringing Deshaun Watson back in to appear in front of the grand jury on a 10th criminal charge. Of the 9 that were a part of the first grand jury hearing, there was only one woman as a part of that who actually spoke in front of the grand jury. The whole thing was an interesting process, but in this situation, as of last night at 11:15 p.m., the second grand jury declined to indict Deshaun Watson, and that now greenlights his introductory press conference in just about 14 minutes from now.
Think he takes questions?
Not about this. I would love for that to be the case. But, I mean, what about the Browns' process has been anything but dishonest with this stuff, right? Did you read that statement that they put out 3 days after the fact? They
Yes.
gave him $230 million? I'm going to pull that up for the audience to hear, because I thought the whole thing was laugh out loud absurd. They released this. So this was about 5 days ago. Again, 3 days removed from them deciding to trade for Deshaun Watson. Here's the statement from Jimmy Haslam and Dee Haslam, who are, of course, the owners of the Cleveland Browns. Quote, "We spent a tremendous amount of time exploring and investigating the opportunity to trade for Watson. We are accurately aware and empathetic to the highly personal sentiments expressed about this decision. Our team's comprehensive evaluation process was of utmost importance due to the sensitive nature of his situation and the complex factors involved. We also understand there are still some legal proceedings that are ongoing, and we will respect due process. It was pivotal that we, along with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, meet with Deshaun to have a straightforward dialogue, discuss our priorities, and hear directly from him on how he wants to approach his career on and off the field. He was humble, sincere, and candid. In our conversations, Deshaun detailed his commitment to leading our team. He understands and embraces the hard work needed to build his name both in the community and on the field." So a couple of things with that statement that lead me to believe that this press conference is going to be a bit of a sham, which is why I want to hear it. I'll go piece by piece here, shall I? We spent a tremendous amount of time exploring and investigating the opportunity to trade for Deshaun Watson. Let me stop you right there in the opening line. Because apparently the tremendous amount of time exploring and investigating the opportunity to trade for Deshaun Watson entailed not speaking to Tony Busby, the lawyer for the people who are accusing Deshaun Watson of sexual misconduct in the 22 civil suits that are still ongoing. It did not involve speaking with the victims as a part of the Cleveland Browns organization, to which they copped out and said, they didn't want to infringe on the legal process. Okay. That, or you don't want to find out what it is that may cause you problems in giving this person the most guaranteed money of any NFL player ever. Problematic. We are acutely aware and empathetic to the highly personal sentiments expressed about this decision. Are you? Are you really? Because if you were truly acutely aware and empathetic to the highly personal sentiments expressed about this decision, you probably wouldn't have done it. Hell, you probably wouldn't have been so desperate after he told you no the first time to go back and give him everything he desired, much less a contract that is structured for this season to where if he does not play, and he is expected to miss games, how many games is yet to be determined, but there will be, it seems, a suspension that comes down from the NFL, so much so that the Browns structured his contract to where he'll barely miss a cent. So aware, acutely aware, and empathetic to the highly personal sentiments, forgive me if I scoff at that line. Our team's comprehensive evaluation process was of the utmost importance due to the sensitive nature of his situation and the complex factors that were involved. Now, the reporting on this is that they had a 30-minute conversation with Deshaun. Now, do you think that this process can be, if it is indeed comprehensive evaluation process, the details of which the comprehensive evaluation process are not relayed to the people who need to know about these things, if you were truly operating with honesty and transparency, you would detail what exactly said comprehensive evaluation process looked like when you're not talking to the lawyers, when you're not talking to the alleged victims, and when you're only having a 30-minute conversation to be like, hey, bud, you want to play football for us next year? We'll get you Amari Cooper. It'll be great. This whole thing, again, people took my tone yesterday, understandably so, as me being upset that Deshaun Watson wasn't criminally charged. It's not true. Not true at all. I am upset with the Cleveland Browns, who have been nothing but fundamentally dishonest about this entire process and have done things in a way that are, I mean, frankly, hugely disreputable. And it, in them doing this, as we said yesterday, they anticipated it affecting their bottom line absolutely zero. And in this press conference that you're about to hear, I imagine that you will hear precious little actual transparency in the nature of the team's, quote, comprehensive evaluation process with the utmost importance due to the sensitive nature of Deshaun Watson's situation. If you're going to lie to my face, just like, is it so wrong to be like, yeah, we wanted him clear of the criminal stuff to make sure he wouldn't get jail time so he can still throw touchdown passes? Like, what's going to happen? If you're doing it this way, is the reaction really going to be that much worse if you just come out and say what it is? Honestly. Because I think most people understand what this is. It's football over morality. And maybe there's no room for morality in sports when you're talking about the most valuable position in all of sports and the fact that you are so damn unflatteringly desperate to do something like this. Because, okay, we got to knock Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson off. Let's go get Deshaun.
But whatever team that would have signed him, whether it was the Falcons or the Panthers or the Saints, you would have seen a statement similar to this.
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Listen, the Browns did it, though. The Browns got told no and did it anyway. Which, not to draw any parallels, but you get my point. So we'll see what Deshaun Watson has to say. Everybody's going to be listening and watching, including us. That's next.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. The NCAA tournament action continues tonight in the Sweet 16 at 6:09. St. Peter's and Purdue will meet as St. Peter's looks to be the first 15 seed to ever reach the Elite Eight. Providence taking on Kansas at 6:30. It's UNC and UCLA at 8:40, and then Iowa State and Miami will round out tonight's action. You can hear it all, including this weekend's Elite Eight games right here on The Zone, courtesy of Westwood One. Former Titans linebacker Jayon Brown has been signed by the Las Vegas Raiders as an unrestricted free agent. The former fifth-round pick spent the last 5 years playing for the Titans, led the team in tackles in 2019. New Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson will once again avoid criminal charges as a second grand jury in Texas declined to indict him after considering an accusation of sexual misconduct. Watson will speak to the media coming up in a few moments for the first time as a Cleveland Brown. You can hear it right here on the Buck Reising Show. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome in, final hour.